Part 7. Stalin is no more. Neither repented they of their murders. Revelation 9:21. Chapter 1. Looking back on it all. We never, of course, lost hope that our story would be told, since sooner or later the truth is told about all that has happened in history. But in our imagining, this would come in the rather distant future, after most of us were dead, and in a completely changed situation. I thought of myself as the chronicler of the archipelago. I wrote and wrote, but I, too, had little hope of seeing it in print in my lifetime. History is forever springing surprises even on the most perspicacious of us. If we could not foresee what it would be like, how for no visible compelling reason the earth would shudder and give, how the gates of the abyss would briefly, grudgingly part so that 2 or 3 birds of truth would fly out if they slammed to stay shut for a long time to come. So many of my predecessors had not been able to finish writing, or to preserve what they had written, or to crawl or scramble to safety. But I had this good fortune, to thrust the first handful of truth through the open jaws of the iron gates before they slammed shut again. Like matter enveloped by antimatter, it exploded instantaneously. Its explosion touched off in turn an explosion of letters. That was to be expected. But also an explosion of newspaper articles, written with gritted teeth, with ill-concealed hatred and resentment. An explosion of official praise that left a sour taste in my mouth. When former Zeks heard this fanfare from all the newspapers in unison, learned that some sort of story about the camps had come out and that the journalists were slavering over it, their unanimous conclusion was, more lying nonsense, nothing safe from those crafty liars. That our newspapers, with their habitual immoderation, might suddenly start falling over each other to praise the truth, that's something no one could possibly imagine. Some of them were reluctant to risk soiling their hands on my story of Ivan Denisovic. But when they started reading it, a single groan broke from all those thousands, a groan of joy and of pain. Letters poured in. I treasure those letters. Only too rarely do our fellow countrymen have a chance to speak their mind on matters of public concern, and former prisoners still more rarely. Their faith had proved false, their hopes had been cheated so often, yet now they believed that the era of truth was really beginning, that at last it was possible to speak and write boldly. And they were disappointed, of course, for the 100th time. Truth, it seems, is always bashful, easily reduced to silence by the too blatant encroachment of falsehood. The prolonged absence of any free exchange of information within a country opens up a gulf of incomprehension between whole groups of the population, between millions and millions. We simply cease to be a single people, for we speak, indeed, different languages. Nonetheless, a breakthrough had been made. Oh, it was stout, the wall of lies, it looked so secure, looked built to last forever. But a breach yawned, and news broke through. Only yesterday we had no camps, no archipelago, and today there they were for the whole people, the whole world to see. Prison camps. Camps, what is more, of the fascist type. When Khrushchev, wiping the tear from his eye, gave permission for the publication of Ivan Denisovic, he was quite sure that it was about Stalin's camps, and that he had none of his own. I myself was taken by surprise when I received a stream of letters from present-day Zeks. On crumpled scraps of paper, in a blurred pencil scrawl, in stray envelopes often addressed and posted by free employees, in other words, on the sly, today's archipelago sent me its criticisms and sometimes its angry protests. These letters, too, were a single many-throated cry, but a cry that said, "What about us?" And the Zeks set up a howl. "What do you mean, never happen again? We're here inside now, and our conditions are just the same. Nothing has changed since Ivan Denisovic's time. The message was the same in letters from many different places. Any Zek who reads your book will feel bitterness and disgust because everything is just as it was. What has changed if all the laws providing for 25 years imprisonment issued under Stalin are still in force? After reading all these letters, I, who had been thinking myself a hero, saw that I hadn't a leg to stand on. In 10 years I had lost my vital link with the archipelago. For them, for today's Zeks, my book is no book. My truth is no truth unless there is a continuation, unless I go on to speak of them too. Truth must be told, and all things must change. In a declaration by the Soviet government dated December 1964, we read, "The perpetrators of monstrous crimes must never end and in no circumstances escape just retribution. The crimes of the fascist murderers, who aimed at the destruction of whole peoples, have no precedent in history." This was to prevent the Federal German Republic from introducing a statute of limitations for war criminals after 20 years had elapsed. But they show no desire to face judgment themselves, although they, too, aimed at the destruction of whole peoples. But in the USSR, no one would have to answer. No one would be looked into. While in the records office they carry out a leisurely inspection and destroy all unwanted documents, lists of people shot, orders committing prisoners to solitary confinement or the disciplinary barracks, files on investigations in the camps, denunciations from stoolies, superfluous information about practical workers and convoy guards. End of Part 7, Chapter 1.